They buy tremendous amounts of our military equipment and they invest in the United States. And that's what we like to hear. We like to hear about jobs, jobs, jobs.
Donald Trump in Saudi Arabia today, busy making deals with Arab leaders. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume, columnist for The Hill Juan Williams, former Democratic Congresswoman Jane Harman, director of the Woodrow Wilson Center, and Kimberley Strassel from the Wall Street Journal. Well, Congresswoman Harman, what do you make of this president's trip to Saudi Arabia so far? We're into day two, and of the effort that he's making to try to unite the Muslim world against radical extremism.
Well, we have one president at a time, and this is our president. And I want this president to be successful on the trip. And so far, he is being successful. It's a little too much pageantry for my taste. I'm sure he loves it. And the messaging helps Saudi Arabia as much or more than it helps us, but we're in the Middle East. I love the idea that he's going to the fount of all three major religions. And I think if he is able to deliver a message that is a little more nuanced than just Iran is terrible, that will be very helpful. Just one last point, Chris, and that is that ISIS and most of these terror groups are Sunni Arabs. The Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states are Sunni Arabs. So it's not just attacking Shia Arabs. It's more about defeating the idea of terrorism, and I hope his speech and his activities address that.
Well, I've seen a first draft of his speech, and it's very much that the people that suffer the most from this kind of Sunni Arab extremism are Sunni Arabs, the Muslims who are getting killed in that part of the world. You know, though, Kim, we've seen other presidents make this kind of effort to try to unite the Muslim world against the savages. They get lip service, but then behind the scenes, a lot of these Muslim leaders, whether it's for payoffs or for whatever reason, continue to fund radicalism. What makes you think this time will be any different?
So I think what makes a difference is 8 years of a lack of leadership from the Obama administration in which things really disintegrated there. And so what you see is all of these countries that are attending this summit have come to understand that allowing Iran to get moved toward nuclear weapons has also allowed them to begin meddling more in all of these other countries through surrogates, whether it's in Yemen, whether it's in Syria. This has caused problems for all of the Gulf region. So they now have a renewed interest in actually, from their own self-interest in doing something and working with Donald Trump. And that, I think, it's a chance for a reset, and that's why it might be different.
But what strikes me about this trip on a larger overview level is just how ambitious it is. The president, as Jane mentioned, going to the centers of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, then engaging with our NATO and economic partners. And the word that White House officials were using in a briefing they held for us this week, especially about the first part of the trip in Saudi Arabia and Israel and the Vatican, is historic. I got to say, I don't think that's an overstatement.
No, but every presidential visit overseas is historic, and when chronicles of presidencies are written, you know, foreign visits and dealing with foreign leaders are always a part of it. And this is unmistakably the stuff of the presidency. No other official in this country has responsibility for foreign policy the way a president does. So this is, no question about it, a very big deal. And the two principal purposes here are very big deals as well. First is to try to strengthen Saudi Arabia as a bulwark against the growth of Iran's power. And second, of course, the big 50-state-plus meeting to try to form a stronger coalition against terrorism. 50 Muslim nations. 50 Muslim nations, that's right, against terrorism. And, you know, bringing the Muslim world, or most of it, together for that purpose is a useful thing. There's a lot of detail here, Chris. For example, you look at Saudi Arabia, even as the president was going there with this purpose, the United States proposed at the UN to add the Saudi-based addition, if you will, of ISIS to those subject to sanctions.
In effect, the Saudi chapter.
The Saudi chapter of ISIS, and the Saudis, through other countries, blocked that. So there's always a lot of detail work to be done, and that's often where the devil lies. But the purpose here is significant, and he seems to be off to a very good start.
Juan, I want to pick up on something that Kim said, because the administration, not surprisingly, is emphasizing how different this president's approach to foreign policy is from Barack Obama's. And what they say is the key is not to preach, not to lecture, especially on human rights, especially in public, and rather instead to be more transactional and to try to make deals and get results. Do you think that makes sense or not?
Well, I'm just a little taken aback because you can say that we're emphasizing deals, not diplomacy. But remember, not only President Obama, but President George W. Bush made arms deals with the Saudis, and they didn't get all of this hosannas and plaudits. It was just part of the deal. That's what you're doing. And so when you talk about President Trump emphasizing jobs and deals, it comes at some cost to us because the lack of human rights attention, the lack of understanding that the Saudis are implicated in everything from 9/11 to these support for the Wahhabis, the radical Islamists, to the madrasas that preach hatred of Israel and Jews and hatred of the Shia. I don't understand how you can say, oh, we'll just do the sword dances that you were talking about with Secretary Tillerson. It seems to me they are flattering President Trump. They are appealing to his ego. But it does not speak to the central issue on the table, which is, are you going to change your behavior?
Kim?
Well, the purpose of this trip is to be over there talking about the terror threat. And they are addressing this. Look, I think it was quite an amazing moment to watch Melania Trump get off that airplane, not wearing a headscarf and shaking the Crown Prince's hand, which, you know, that's very symbolic. Ivanka Trump is over there. She's going to be doing a round table with women.
Michelle Obama did the same thing.
Well, she did as well, too. But I guess the importance is you also have to do by action, not just by lecturing, not just by talking. And if they are over there attempting to, behind the scenes, because look, that's where all that real action is taking place as well, too. These are all these events that are for TV, but what you've got is the entire team of Trump delegates that are doing behind the scene meetings.
But what I hear from Secretary Rice, what I've heard from Senator McCain is, human rights are an essential part of our long-term policy as Americans.
The question arises whether the best way to deal with that issue is to do so with public pronouncements in the face of these people who are hosting you, or is it better to handle all of the outward and visible stuff with diplomacy, which is, after all, what this is all about, and to address these issues in a quiet way.
A brief final word, because we got to move on.
You have to do both, Brit. It's good that the Egyptians released one guy held in prison, but it really matters that the Saudis now try civilians by military courts.
All right. Well, that was brief. We have to take a break here.